is Just Dubs with John Dickinson.
Dickinson's an underrated talent, 100%.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
Runs it through. What a catch by Butler, setting up Curry for three. Steph is already running back. He knew that was down.
A little look-away three from Steph Curry, but not nearly enough as the Warriors return home off the 6-game road trip. And they fall last night to the Portland Trailblazers, 127-123, the final last night. We welcome you in here on a Saturday morning. Happy Saturday. Just Dubs with JD, John Dickinson, here on the Sports Leader. We've got Raf Corral in our Daly City studios. We've got Kyle Haar on hand. Wow, it is a who's who here on this Saturday morning with the Warriors sitting right back at 500. The road trip was going so well a week ago, Kyle. A couple of wins in San Antonio. They didn't fumble away the game against the Pelicans while we were all working the Niner game down in Arizona. But they lose to Orlando. They rest everybody against Miami, and then they come back last night. And I think one of the more disappointing losses, we had Dubs OT last night, Kyle, out at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City, but heavy favorites were the Warriors, and they just come up short, get outscored 48-33 in the second half. What's going on, brother? Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. Good to see Raf in the studio. But yeah, it was disappointing because you sat all your guys against Miami, and then you come back against the Trailblazers, and the Trailblazers are without Shaedon Sharpe and Drew Holiday, two of their starters. And the story of kind of this young season has been these guys that are down on the depth chart of other teams, a la Caleb Love, a la Ryan Rollins, a la Quentin Jackson, going off and hurting the Warriors.
Man, and that was the case again last night. Caleb Love with some big three-pointers. Donovan Clingan owned the paint, and Denny Avdia was just fantastic. And there is, I think, a discussion to be had, and we can open up the phone lines here. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627 if you want to jump in and join the conversation. Appreciate everybody filing in on YouTube and Twitch as well. The Dubs OT, just Dubs. YouTube chat, obviously the best YouTube chat in sports, and we appreciate hearing from the people. So we'll get some Kyle's clicks here on this Saturday over the course of the hour here on Just Dubs. But you can look at last night where the Warriors were heavy favorites, even coming home off the long trip, in part because Portland was shorthanded. And the issue in the grand scheme of things, like we can look at last night, and we did on Dubs OT, and it was the defense last night. You give up 127. Avdia's having his way, just driving to the basket, setting up dunkers, setting up open threes. Warriors confused on their rotation, but also just inability to keep the drive in front of them, right? Just the typical, quintessential, like, don't get beat off the dribble. I know the Warriors mixed in some zone last night, and Portland was able to make enough three-pointers to make that pay, which teams typically will have to do. But the Warriors were just trying to find it defensively. And so last night we can look at it and say, all right, it's the defense, and it's the size. But then there are other games where it's the offense that is the problem. And I think overall it's probably been more the offense than the defense through the season, because they're still a top 10 defense. Even after the game last night, they're 10th, I believe. Danny Emmerman, shout out there. He put it in his story for the SF Standard. Still 10th in overall defensive rating here 18 games into the season. But last night, it's about the defense and the size and the rebounding disadvantage and just getting beat. And so it becomes this question of what do you do? And seemingly every night, Kyle, and we're going to get into some of the quotes from last night, from Jimmy Butler to Steve Kerr to even Steph Curry. But on these nights where the Warriors get beat, it feels like there's always a different thing that's popping up as to the reason that they're getting beat that needs to be addressed. And so when you separate yourself from the game to game and you start to look at 18 games into an 82-game season. We're a solution-oriented show here, and it's becoming, I think, more difficult to find solutions because as they find solutions to certain problems due to the inconsistencies and the roster composition, other problems, Kyle, start to pile up, and then you have to fix those problems, and it can create problems in other areas.
Yeah, and we heard Steve Kerr post-game saying maybe TJD is a viable option and going bigger, especially against the Portland Trail Blazers, who are killing the Warriors on the boards, that Steve Kerr wanted to play a bigger lineup, but then that poses new problems where now you have basically guys who have been pretty much ineffective at the 5, whether it's Quinn Post, Al Horford, or Trey Jackson-Davis. And then you have Draymond Green playing the 4, which JD, you said yesterday, that's not his best position. So now you're relying on lesser production at the 5 to try and solve the smaller lineup problem, but then it just poses another problem.
Yeah, and so if you play 2 bigs or Draymond with the center and essentially play Draymond at the 4, well, then that means Jimmy's going to be the 3 and Steph obviously is going to be the 1. And so you only have one other spot for anybody else on the roster to play with that lineup, especially if it's a closing lineup. So what do you do? Does that mean you got to pick between Moody and Pods? Last night you would pick Pods. Al Horford was out for the end of last night's game due to some right hamstring tightness as well. So Horford even wasn't an option down the stretch for the Warriors. But it creates this issue where, one, I don't really think Draymond is at his best anymore when he's playing next to a big, but the Warriors are still at their best when they play smaller. And that's not to say that you can play small all the time, because you certainly cannot play small all the time. But when your best players are guards and you have so few wings really that you trust, true wings that you trust, if you're taking up a center spot in a closing lineup in particular, or even in a starting lineup, it changes your ability to often play your best players, because Quentin Post and TJD, and Horford certainly has not played at this level to this point, but Quentin Post and TJD are not among your best players. So you're taking minutes because you want to play bigger away from somebody else that might be a part of your best group. And so it again creates another problem. And I was really stunned to see, Steve Kerr say basically that they're going to have to look at maybe playing Draymond more with a big next to him. And we've talked about it. The Warriors have not played as well in those games where they've played more of the 2 big lineups. There have been some exceptions, but again, it also relates to, somebody like a Jonathan Kuminga coming back. If you're going to play 2 bigs and then Jimmy, then you're going to play Kuminga at the 2 again, or at the 3 with Jimmy at the 2. And they were doing that a little bit at the beginning of the season, and kind of fluctuating between, was Podziemski going to start? Was Quentin Post going to start? And Kuminga was out there with Draymond and Jimmy and Steph. And those lineups didn't quite look right, to use what Steve Kerr has said about it here in the early part of the season. So, yeah, overall, I think it's some nights it's trying to find offense. Some nights it's trying to find competitiveness. Some nights it's trying to find enough skill and shooting and offensive prowess. If they are playing, they go small to be able to do that, Kyle. And so those are their best lineups are smaller, because it's not necessarily about Draymond at the 5 or who is at the 5. It's the fact that they just don't have enough wings that are big enough and good enough. Like that's where this team truly lacks size. We can say on a night like last night, if you had another big that could play a few minutes here and there or be more effective, that could be beneficial to this team. But make no mistake, the reality for this team is the fact that where they lack the size the most is at the wing spots and at the guard spots. And that's where you look at a team like Portland, you look at all these teams that even aren't good teams across the league, and they have bigs, sure, but they have the wings. They have an Avdia who's basically a guard at 6'8", who just puts his head down. And like the Warriors have nobody that can do that with the skill level. I think, Avdia is almost what you would, in a dream world, hope that Kuminga could have developed into by this point of his career, but he hasn't. And we all know the reasons why. We don't need to belabor that. But to me, it's wing size and skill that's the bigger issue here. And if they had that, you could collectively rebound more consistently, and then you could play some of the smaller lineups with Draymond at the 5 and Jimmy or Kuminga at the 4 and kind of go from there.
I also think regarding last night's loss and Kerr saying that, he should go bigger because they were getting dominated on the glass. But like, Quinn Post is not some Kevon Looney rebounder. TJD is not some Kevon Looney rebounder. Al Horford isn't some Kevon Looney rebounder either. I don't think that would have solved getting out rebounded in the second chance point differential that there was.
Yeah, and it just creates this conundrum of how do you look to improve this thing. And the other part is just the unsustainability of the energy that it takes for this team to consistently play small and win. And it doesn't mean that it's not their best lineups, and it doesn't mean that they shouldn't try to do it as much as possible, because I maintain you look at the 2 games against San Antonio plus the game against the Pelicans, and there's nobody bigger in the league than Victor Wembanyama. But with Draymond playing the center spot and the ball movement created by, whether it was Will Richard as the starter, but really what it got the Warriors back to was playing a lot of Brandon Podziemski with Steph and Moody and Jimmy and Draymond, which, going back to last year after the trade, was the Warriors' best 5. And for the most part, that was the Warriors' starting 5. But it's proved to be, I think, too taxing, and they have to play too hard with that group to be able to beat anybody. And I think that's the overarching theme here as this team sits at 9-9. And we can say some of it's the schedule and the 12 road games as opposed to 6 home games and all the back-to-backs and all that. Again, I don't like complaining about the schedule as it relates to where this team is. They thought they built a team that could be able to withstand it over 82 games. And maybe when push comes to shove, they do. Although it certainly doesn't look like it, but they've got to be able to bring the intensity that it takes on a night in, night out basis while playing small, because that's their best and most skilled groups to be able to compete against anybody. But the problem is, and you look through it, it hasn't been the Warriors' willingness to compete or bring it against the San Antonios or the Denvers when they're whole at home in the home opener, or the Lakers on opening night, or the Clippers before everybody knew the Clippers weren't a very good team at the beginning of the year, as they are right now. 4-11? I believe the Clippers are playing in one of these early morning weekend games right now in Charlotte. But the issue is the consistency against everybody else. And they can't find enough defense in a game like last night. They can't find enough offense in some of these other games against teams, even without stars, that are winnable. And so it leads them back to taking these L's that drop their record back to a point where they basically look like a play-in team at this point, which unfortunately is what they've looked like throughout the course of a majority of each of these last 3 seasons, or worse, since they won that 2022 championship. It feels in a different way, because I think this team overall is more talented than last year's team, than 2 years ago's team, if you go back to 24 and 23 respectively. But it feels an awful lot like the teams that the Warriors had going back to the 23 team, the team that got beat in Sacramento in the play-in tournament, and even the team that they had last year, closer to, I think, last year with the high end, but still unable to navigate the long haul of an 82-game season. And I think the answers at this point are still in the long term not on this Warriors roster. But that being said, there's nothing really that they can do about it in terms of looking to make a move for almost 2 months, because that's when Jonathan Kuminga becomes available to be traded. Now, look, they can trade other players if they wanted to make some kind of a move, but I still think they're more in assessment mode as to what they have overall. So let's take a quick time out. It's John Dickinson. It's just Dubs. We got Kyle Harr. We've got Raf Corral in our Daly City studios here on this Saturday morning. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. The Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line is open. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch. Trying to figure out how the Warriors can get back on track. They do have today off and a practice tomorrow. How much can practice time help the Warriors figure things out, and what can be done in terms of who should be playing more, who should be playing less? We'll continue the conversation there. Also, what can Jonathan Kuminga bring to the table once he's healthy enough to return? That always a part of the equation. So we'll get into that. It's just Dubs with JD here on the Sports Leader.
JD on a Saturday just feels right.
KNBR, the Sports Leader.
Well, you overcome it with execution and hitting bodies, rebounding wise. And, we tried to play big more in the second half. Obviously, we started Quentin for Will, and then we played Trace some. So we tried to just keep our bigger guys out there. But give them credit. They played a great second half.
Just Dubs with John Dickinson keeps rolling. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Yeah, Portland does play better in the second half. Really, the final 18 minutes, they outscored the Warriors 48-33. They beat the Dubs last night at Chase. Warriors' first home loss. And they're 9-9 overall, 5-1 at home, 4-8 on the road. 4 more games to come here after today and tomorrow off. Warriors will practice tomorrow. But yeah, Utah, Houston, the Pelicans, a couple of games that need to be wins in there, Utah and the Pelicans, and then 2 difficult games with Houston and Oklahoma City. And part of the problem for the Dubs is the fact that they're going to be motivated and want to bring it against Houston, and they're going to be motivated and want to bring it against Oklahoma City, but finding that mode in which they can coast and put games on cruise control against everybody else has been part of the problem. And yeah, playing big as the Warriors did more in the second half last night didn't work. And to be honest, 2 bigs for the most part haven't been the answer when the Warriors have gone to it, other than just as a change of pace to protect Draymond from having to play the 5 all the time throughout the course of games, which I don't think anybody's advocating that. But when you look up right now, and we got Kyle Haar, we got Raf Corral, in our Daly City studios, I think, Kyle, this team's better than mid. I really do. And we'll get to some Kyle's clicks here coming up in the YouTube chat. I think this team's better than mid, but when you're 9-9, you're mid. And I think they have to figure out a baseline starting lineup and then go from there in terms of building a rotation, because they just, it's been last night, even, you go big, it winds up not working. The change to get Moody into the starting lineup, I think helped. I think Will Richard had earned the spot, but we still haven't seen enough. And Brandon Pajemski was a bright spot last night. We still, to me, haven't seen enough of the Steph, Pajemski, Moody, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green group together. I think that's the group that I'd probably look to get back to starting here. And then you build minutes off of that to where you want to play 2 bigs and combinations off of that to where it can kind of fit. But it is a little peculiar to me that best group, and I think Pod's not starting the season playing well is part of it. I think Moody's injury was part of it. Kuminga earned a starting spot there for the time being. But I think they have to get back to the baseline of that being their best 5. And so you start with that, and then you figure out who's going to play on a night in, night out basis around that based on who's healthy and matchups, and trying to come up with some semblance of some consistency, which can get this team on a little bit of a run.
Yeah, that was going to be actually my solution that I posed today, was going back to that starting lineup that finished the season last year 23-8. And I know Pods has not played well, especially at the beginning of the season. And like you said, JD, Moody with his injury, and now Kuminga playing well. But I think that they need to get back to that lineup. I think that's their best lineup, and I think that lineup flowed really well at the end of last season.
Well, and you can split the minutes. You can bring Quentin Post in and play him with Draymond in the first couple minutes, or you can bring Horford in and play him with Draymond for the first couple of minutes. Typically, Post doesn't get in until either late first quarter or beginning of the second quarter. So Horford typically is the first sub in on the nights where Horford's there. On the nights Horford's not there, then you give Quentin Post a little bit more run. I think Kuminga is basically your backup 4 when he comes back, and you hope that he can continue to do the things with the intent that he was doing the first 5, 6, 7 games of the year, and try to get to that dunker spot and take the corner 3 and just drive and get fouled, drive and score, bring intensity, rebound. Like I do think there's a place for Kuminga in that role as a backup. And if it's a night where Kuminga's got a good matchup and he's feeling it, we know that he's capable of going for 20. Now, like Moody and like Pajemski, you can't count on it every night, and you certainly don't want to have to feature it, because I think anytime any of those guys are featured at all, it tends to go in the other direction. But Kuminga, I think for the time that he remains on the team, still very much has the ability to help this team, even in a bench role. And then you go from there in terms of, Will Richard's going to play? You got to figure out how much on a night in, night out basis Buddy Hield's going to play. He has not played well here to begin the season, which has been a problem. And then, you kind of split the minutes up from there. Is GP going to play? Probably not. I think if Kuminga's back, I think that, the door's been open for GP2 to play more, because Kuminga has been out and because obviously Steve Kerr trusts him. But I think that's how you have to try to come up with, to me, they're better equipped to be their most consistent offensively when they play that group. And then it becomes a matter of, can you compete enough defensively? Can you compete enough on the boards to make it stand up? But so often, and this is the thing that to me was the most frustrating part of last night's game, as bad as the defense was. And last night it was all about the defense and the inability to contain, and they fouled and open 3-point shooters. Avdi is having his way, all that stuff. But the frustrating thing for me about last night's game, and there's too many games like this for the Warriors, just go win the game with your offense in the regular season. Like, just go win 133 to 127. And again, I'm not putting last night on the offense, but because of a lot of the lineup juggling, I feel like they can't consistently, maybe last night aside, do enough offensively to win those games on offense when their defense is a little bit better, or another team is having maybe a colder shooting night against them.
And that's with Steph scoring 38. Like the offensive production from the other starters, not Jimmy Butler, and you know what you're going to get from Draymond, but the other offensive starters, Will Richard and Moses Moody, and then you go into your bench players. And Pods had a good night last night, but they just haven't gotten enough consistency from more than one player on a given night. Like it feels like, oh, there's a Moody night. Oh, there's a Pods night. Oh, there's a Quentin Post night. And your token Buddy Hield night here and there. But it's like one guy will get 15 to 20 off the bench, but then everyone else will go a combined like 3 for 13. And that's just how it's kind of been.
None of them are carriers, and none of them are consistent. But I think your best chance of having the most consistency is Pods and Moody both back in there, play the small lineup, have that be your baseline, play them with Steph. Pods plays better with better players. Moody, I think, is earned the right as the point of attack defender and 3-and-D type of a wing, even if he is inconsistent night to night with his scoring ability. Put him out there. Those are the best two players, I think, to play around Steph and Jimmy and Draymond. And then you just kind of go from there. And, you mix in Kuminga, you mix in Horford, you mix in Quentin Post, you give Buddy Hield a shot. And if he's not having it, I think you can play Buddy, you can play Will Richard with that group as well. Sub him in for Pods, bring Pods back in as kind of the backup point guard. Sub Jimmy Butler out, put Jimmy Butler back in when Steph comes out, stagger the minutes as it relates to them. All right, let's get some Kyle's clicks here. 808 KMBR 415-808-5627, the phone number as well. Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. The 209 chiming in here. Dubs are nothing more than a 500 team. Yeah, I mean, you are what your record says you are, right? I mean, that, and what, 8th in the West? And that's the frustrating part, is this season to me seems like it is heading down a path that the Warriors truly believe they could avoid compared to the last 3 seasons. in 23, 24, and 25, simply because they had Jimmy Butler and they added Al Horford, and we'll see what Melton can provide. And again, did they over believe in what the young players, like, did they really think Podziemski was going to turn into Jordan Poole of Jordan Poole's third year? I mean, if they did, they were fooling themselves in terms of the ability to score. Did they really think Moses Moody was going to make a significant leap to where he's like pushing to be a young Klay Thompson in terms of his shooting? I mean, hell no. Again, no disrespect to Moses Moody, who I like. He's a solid player, should be, I think, a starter on this team, given what they currently have. But like those, you never, one thing, Kyle, if you learn from me, working with me, you never count on a young player making a leap. It might happen, but you want that to be gravy as opposed to something that you're baking in that you need to be the best version of yourself. If you're baking it in that you need it to be the best version of yourself, that's what we call hopium. Hopium, Kyle.
Yeah, not the best of drugs. But I think they
Kyle,
put,
big drug guy among the three here. No. Kidding.
I do think they put too many eggs in the basket of hoping and maybe expecting one or multiple of Pods, Moody, and Kuminga making that leap, and maybe Kuminga and Pods especially growing into that third scoring option. But truly, I mean, we've seen that all three of them are just too inconsistent, and when Steph and Jimmy aren't playing, neither of them are carriers either.
Yeah, it's tough. All right, let's get some Kyle's clicks here in the YouTube chat. Appreciate everybody who's jumping in here on this Saturday morning. Our buddy Gene, too non-athletic defensively, inconsistent on both sides of the ball. Yeah, some nights it's the offense, some nights it's the defense. It's just really, really frustrating, man, night to night. Last night it was the defense, but then you just never know. The next night it's just, third scorer. Steph didn't go for 38. Who's going to step up? I mean, that was the other big takeaway just from last night specifically is Pods has a really good Pods game, maybe his best and most efficient offensive game of the season. Steph goes for 38. You put up 123 and you take the L. Because on that night, you can't rebound and second chance points kill you, and your inability to defend consistently ends up hurting you. So, yeah, the inconsistency, and it's both ways, is something that I think this team's going to have to figure out a way to combat. And then other nights, it's a competitive spirit issue, frankly. It's a motivated to play against Wemby, motivated to play against Jokic, motivated to play against Houston, motivated to play, I haven't played Houston yet, motivated to play against the Clippers, motivated to play opening night down in Los Angeles when all eyes are on you, and it's the return of NBA on NBC, and you're a headliner against Luka. Like, that's like it's the issue is not those games. The issue is last night. The issue is Orlando, and no shade at Portland or Orlando. The issue is you can't beat Milwaukee without Giannis, and you can't beat Indiana without Halliburton and half their roster. And then Indiana took even more guys away when they came to Chase a couple weeks ago, and the game was still tied with a quarter to go until the Warriors blew the doors off the thing in the fourth quarter. It's just that inconsistency is a crusher. All right, good one, Gene. Let's go rapid fire here. Dubs becoming known as a team that turns G Leaguers on opposing teams into all-stars, a la Love for the Blazers. Remember Quentin Jackson? He carved the Warriors up pretty good. Yeah, it's career nights for Klingon. Klingon had a career high last night. Donovan Klingon had a career high last night, scoring. He's been an offensive rebounding machine. He is one of the best, if not the best, offensive rebounder in the NBA. I mean, he's a top offensive rebound, but scoring threat. I mean, he destroyed them last night. In addition to Love from 3-point range, and Avdia is just a hell of a player. Denny Avdia, that's somebody the Warriors could could use for sure. Rusty Nail, and he was available, by the way. The Portland ended up Portland. It's a long and winding road, and they have Drew Holiday back, and Drew Holiday they had for a minute before they shipped him to Boston off of the Lillard trade, and but the Warriors. Do you remember the Iguodala pick that the Warriors sent to Memphis when Durant left and they had to get D'Lo? And so, eventually D'Lo became Wiggins and Kuminga, but they had to get D'Lo and the sign and trade, and they became hard capped. And so they had to get rid of Iguodala, basically, because they were hard capped. They couldn't afford to keep him under the cap. So they attached a pick to send Iguodala to Memphis. And remember, he pissed off everybody in Memphis because he didn't want to play there. But Memphis ended up sending that pick. I think it was a 2024 first. Memphis sent that pick somewhere, and then it got sent to Portland, and somehow Portland used that pick to get Avdia. That was in the pack. So it's 10 degrees of how did the Blazers get Avdia, but the Warriors pick that they attached to Iguodala to get him out in 2019 so they could sign Russell, who eventually turned into Wiggins and Kuminga. That's long-winded story, but now you know. Did you know? The more you know, Kyle, the more you know.
Now Denny Avdia is dropping 30 on us. And
now Denny Avdia is he's a freaking all-star. And Portland officially a bad matchup. Rusty Nail play-in tournament, assuming you escape, likely means a first-round matchup with OKC or Denver. I need some of that caller's opium right now. Yeah, that's not a scenario you want if you're the Warriors, because it does look like, and then let's say you get to 6, you're playing Houston with Durant instead of Jalen Green. And you barely beat Houston with Jalen Green last year. So, all right, let's do 2 more. We'll take a timeout. And then, we're going to blow past the 12 o'clock hour, I think, a little bit, or blow into the 12 o'clock hour a little bit. I didn't understand Butler's comments about the defense. Their defense is terrible now, but their defense during the title runs was the real reason they were so dominant. Yeah, Robert Brown, especially 15, 17, 18. Yeah, it was. But the defense, Jimmy said it was the defense. So I'm a little confused on that, Robert. It was the defense. Their defense, and that was the point he was making last night, was that they're not guarding anybody and that they didn't guard anybody last night, and they're not consistently guarding, which, again, you look at the overall numbers, and I think they're still top 10 in terms of defensive rating, although it's a little early still. I think, sample sizes around 20, 25 games. So that we're getting pretty close in terms of how that goes. But it's hard to have, I'll even give the Warriors the benefit of the doubt for the inability to consistently bring a defensive intensity. Nobody does in the NBA over 82 games. OKC can, but Houston can, but most teams can't. And so you have to figure out ways to win games with your offense in the regular season. And I think that is maybe what Kerr's getting at in terms of some of the frustration and being more worried about the offense, because to me, there's too many nights where if the Warriors had a little bit more offensively, they win a game. Milwaukee, Indiana, although they weren't good defensively in those games either. And if you do that, then everybody just kind of moves on to the next. And it's all right, they won. They're 11-7. They got a solid record. They're in the top 6. Move on to the next. Go beat Utah Monday night. But when you don't, then everything gets examined. Then everybody's wondering what the deal is with Kuminga. And now everybody's wondering whether they need to get bigger or smaller, or whether they have the right guys on the right. When you lose games, all those things come back to the forefront. And I think they escaped it for a minute in San Antonio with the 2 wins and then against the Pelicans. But there's something, there's a little underlying something going on right now. And I think it was calmed down by the San Antonio wins, but it felt back last night in the postgame. Steph's frustration in the postgame press conference, Jimmy's comments postgame about the defense, Steve kind of searching for, do I want to go bigger? Do I want to go smaller? Like how do it's not the defense, it's the offense. Like there is just a disconnect right now that I think they thought they had been able to move past. But when you don't win a game like last night, when you're a double-digit favorite at home, then it all kind of comes back and it repressurizes everything. All right, one more here on Just Dubs for this segment. The load management games don't make sense to me. It's not like these games earlier in the year have less weight. This isn't a team that has the luxury of punting games away. I hate load management. Everybody in the chat, everybody listening knows. People have listened to me for a decade and a half in the Bay Area. I absolutely loathe load management. I despise it. I think I actually think it's a joke. I think, but at times it also can be a necessity. I didn't really have an issue with the Miami game into their trip. They had already banked 3 wins. Like, to me, it becomes when you punt on the Miami game, you're punting on the Miami game to make sure you get last night. So when you don't get last night, then I think it's, you have every right, if you're a fan, to be frustrated about it. You have every right, if you're a media member, to question about it. The one that I really didn't like was the Sacramento one because, Steph was sick, so he wasn't going to play. But if you played, and Jimmy was a little banged up, but if you play Jimmy or Draymond, I think in that game, you probably win that game. But again, the Warriors would tell you it's more about beat Indiana, beat Milwaukee, beat Portland. If you win 2 of those 3, you're 11-7, and I think that kind of, again, smooths everything over. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to do. It's one thing to do it in Miami at the end of a 6-game trip. It's another to do it because you have a 90-minute bus ride. Oh my God, because on the night after you couldn't blow out Phoenix, and look, Phoenix is maybe better than we thought they were going to be, but they had every opportunity to turn that Phoenix game into a blowout. They couldn't. Oh, they got a 90-minute bus ride. Let's go. The Kings haven't won a freaking game since then. That was 2.5 weeks ago. The Kings have not won since they beat the Warriors on November 5th. They have not won a single. And again, I get it. It was the 5 through 15 on the Warriors roster, and it was. But that's one that maybe you try to go get that one. I don't know, but. Yeah, I don't have an issue with the Miami game. Kyle, quick thought, and then we gotta take a timeout here. We're entering crude territory in terms of break management on this show.
Yeah, add Russell Westbrook to the list of guys.
Schroeder killed him down the stretch.
Schroeder. Oh my God.
We've seen Schroeder do that to the Warriors 10 times in his career. Just kind of be having a nothing game, and then all of a sudden he'll hit 4 shots in the fourth quarter to put him away.
And not to be mean to Schroeder, but when he was a Warrior, he maybe had 1 or 2 good games out of the 20.
He had one game like that, and I don't even remember it. He had one. I'm sure he did, but I don't remember it. So yeah. Anyway, all right. 808 KNBR. Let's take a timeout. We'll come back and we'll do more Kyle's clicks as we continue to find a solution to this thing and wrap things up here on a Saturday. Just Dubs with JD, talking some Warriors on a Saturday morning. Kyle Harr, Raf Corral. We're all here, right, on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader. your blue and gold. Just Dubs with John Dickinson now continues on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
All right, final segment. John Dickinson, Just Dubs, here on this Saturday morning. We got Kyle Haar, Raf Corral. Appreciate everybody on the YouTube chat, everybody that's texted in. 808-KNBR, 415-808-5627. Getting up, talking some Dubs here. Early season, although we are almost to the quarter mark of the season as we get to 20 games and 21 games, and you're at the quarter mark. So the Warriors against Utah Monday, then they play Houston coming up the night before Thanksgiving, and the Pelicans. So the games are a little more spread out. Pelicans a week from tonight. So only 2 games between us doing this show and our next installment of Just Dubs, when the Warriors will take on the Pelicans coming up a week from tonight at Chase Center. And then Oklahoma City comes in to close out the trip. So the Warriors are going to be at home. The Warriors are going to have some practice time, that all-important practice time, to try and figure out what ails them. Last night, the defense. A lot of nights it's been the offense. Some inconsistency, I think, in terms of the rotation. You know what's interesting, Kyle? I actually think, and some people are going to maybe disagree, and we'll get more Kyle's clicks. I actually feel like, other than the whole going to start Quentin Post one night and then Pajemski the next, or maybe Moody in there, like it just, I feel like Kerr's been more consistent in the guys that he's played this year in the first 18 games than he has been in other years, if that makes sense. Maybe not with the starting lineup, because he's had the bigger lineup some games, he's had the smaller lineup the other games. I still think the smaller lineup is the better of the two, and the way I would go night in, night out. But it feels like the rotation has been relatively consistent. The start of the second and fourth quarter group has been pretty much the same. The starting lineups have varied a little bit, but the area where this team really has been deficient has been the back half of first quarters and the back half of third quarters. It's been less in the Pajemski, and last night it was Healed, but Pajemski, Healed, Jimmy, Draymond, Post, that group that starts usually Moody's in there, that starts the second and fourth quarters. That group actually got the Warriors back in the game last night with Steph out of the game, and they were down 7 at the start of the quarter. So that's been pretty consistent in terms of that group. The closing lineups to each half have been, I think, pretty consistent with who's played well on that night. And then the starting lineups, again, I don't like the fluctuation with big one night, small the next night. I don't like that, but I don't really think that's it's been the Healed, Peyton, Kuminga without Steph type. It's been that group that's hurt the Warriors back half of the first quarter, back half of the third quarter. I think more than anything, if there's areas that need to be tweaked, it might be that. But what do you buy what I'm selling in terms of, it feels like Kerr's been a little more consistent this year?
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about, because was it last year or 2 years ago, there were like 40 different starting combinations. And like I remember Trace Jackson Davis was starting. Yeah, I mean, that's when you had like 5 just random guys starting.
He was starting at the beginning of the year last year, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about now. But now he's a viable option.
With Kuminga.
Now he's an option, JD.
With Kuminga, with Wiggins. I mean, there was a lot of that. And so, yeah, it just, I don't know. It feels like they've been a little bit more, feels like he's been a little bit more consistent. I'm going back through, they used their 7th different starting lineup, 8 different starting lineups after Wednesday. I'm looking at the starting group from last night. That group had started already a couple. So they've had 8 different starting lineups. I don't know. Maybe the data is not. They've had 8 starting lineups in 18 games. So I guess that's not.
Well, I'll tell you, they should just
not
stick
exactly
with
consistent.
what worked last year. Steph, Pods, Moody, Jimmy, Trey. That should be the starting lineup going forward.
I agree. And it's interesting. I mean, I touched on this, and I think this goes to maybe, I don't want to say internal drama. And I'll be honest, and we were going to talk about the Anthony Slater, Jonathan Kuminga piece. And, I really didn't think that was as big a deal as it was made. Like, I didn't really think that totally. I know a lot of people thought, oh, there's Kuminga complaining again. And I really didn't see it that way. It was more just they have to work through, and the whole scapegoat comment. And I don't know. I don't feel to me, it felt a little bit overblown. I think you have to give Kuminga the benefit of the doubt for the way he started the year. He's been hurt. To me, his best role on this team is going to be coming off the bench. I think it always was. But the one thing I will say, though, and again, I did want to make the point that I think a lot of that was with the reaction to it. I don't think there's anything wrong with the article. I think it was actually a very fair, really strong, well-angled to all sides of the issue type of a read. And, Slater's great for a reason. But it didn't, to me, it was more, there are underlying things that Steve Kerr's trying to manage here. And, more the beginning of the year and how Kuminga was going to be handled in camp and the like than anything that's gone on lately where he struggled and subsequently was hurt and has been out of the lineup. I'm kind of removing that part from it. But how they handle Kuminga is a thing. And how you take Kuminga out of the lineup if you think it's the best thing is a thing. And, Podziemski has been a thing because he has been up and down to begin the year. And I think, we touched on the fact that, you take Kuminga out of the lineup and given the way Pods was playing, because those two, like it or not, are kind of tied together, right? They're both confident in their abilities. They both, let's be honest, I think have higher opinions of the type of player that they are than they actually are. But you go to take Kuminga out of the lineup, which is going to be a headline, even if you think it's best for the team. But given the way Pods was playing at the time you took Kuminga out of the lineup, could you really put Pods in then? And or are you going, or are people, or is that going to cause? Wait a minute, you take me out, but not Pods, and Pods has maybe played worse than I have to this point. So you reward Will Richard in doing it, and Richard had earned it. And I know we had a couple of people in the chat saying, well, Will Richard, he scored 30 against Sacramento, and then he's still a rookie. Like, he's barely played, and he hasn't been like, he's still a rookie in the league. Like, he's still learning. Again, I think, could we see a little more Will Richard over maybe GP or Buddy? Possibly. But, he's somebody that I think is still trying to figure out the NBA game. But I don't know. It just, I say all of that to come back to the fact that I think there is, I don't want to say drama, because I think that might be too strong, but I do think there's internal agendas, things that need to be, Draymond doesn't want to play center. Like, that's a thing. Like, that's a thing that's like stated on the record. Like, he doesn't want to play a lot of center. And I think Kerr, because he knows Draymond doesn't want to play a lot of center, is trying to appease Draymond in some way to protect him to where he's fresh, later on down the line. You've got the Kuminga issue. How do you manage him? And, starting and being a focal point is important to Kuminga. And so, but yet you need to get these other things out of Kuminga. So you have to manage that. And then Pods is kind of its own thing you have to manage. And you're trying to win games, and you're trying to uphold trade value, and you're trying to find combinations with guys that are not maybe performing at a level that you would want. So I say all that to say, I think there's a lot of stuff beneath the surface right now that the Warriors are trying to figure out, in addition to the actual basketball stuff. And when you lose, it all bubbles toward the surface. And I think the only way to really quell it is consistently winning games, which is something they haven't been able to do since the 4-1 start. As you look up now, 5-8 since the 4-1 start to get to 9-9.
Yeah, and then if you go back to last season, I think everything was ironed out. It was settled that Kuminga was going to come off the bench and Jimmy was going to start, and everyone was geared towards winning and making a playoff push. And I think that's where Draymond's comments this season about, everyone was geared to winning and not worried about the personal agenda and all that thing. But I lost my train of thought, but
It happens. It's all right.
I do think, yeah, this season needs some ironing out. Whereas last season, I think things were pretty much in place. And once you started winning, winning heals all. And once that starting group of Curry, Pods, Moody, Jimmy, and Draymond started working out and winning, it was clear that they needed to go with that going forward.
All right, let's get another installment of Kyle's Clicks here before we wrap things up, and appreciate everybody who's joined us for the full hour here. If you miss it, you can always go and check it out wherever you get your podcasts. We podcast it, the KNBR YouTube page, if you want to watch it back. If that's your preferred method, you can do that as well. But yeah, let's go rapid fire here for about 4 or 5 minutes on some Kyle's Clicks. KNBR, JD, if you could trade for
that's JD, Ja. And they cleared it up earlier.
Oh, Ja. Okay. Ja, LaMelo. I don't like any of those. I like LaMelo probably as a player and a fit for the Warriors above Ja or Trae Young, but I don't really like any of those three. It has to be one of those guys. LaMelo would be the short answer. I think LaMelo,
and add that to another trade candidate that they could have drafted.
Yeah, another trade. Exactly. Florida Dubs fan, it's a sheer lack of talent. They could potentially be the laughing stock of the West if they don't make the playoffs. How much more does Lacob need to see? Yeah, I do think there needs to be some pressure applied here. And I know there has been in other years, but I mean, for this, I think if there's one thing the Warriors did, it's that they overvalued the 23-8 over the final 31. They overvalued that how much that could be replicated over 82. Like, I think they thought, and look, that's what 60-win pace. So I don't think anybody thought they had a 60-win team. But I think they thought that the 23-8 could be replicated to at least 50 to 53 wins with the addition of Horford and Melton. Melton, they haven't gotten anything out of yet because he's been hurt. That's fine. Horford's had 3 or 4 good games, and the rest have not been great. And then it's just a different motivational point when you're going through the slot. Like that team, to your point, what you just said, Kyle, they were so engaged because why were they so engaged over the final 31 games after they got Jimmy? Well, part of it was the fact that they had embarrassed themselves in the first 51 games of the year to the point where they were under 500 at the trade. I mean, that, they were 10th in the Western Conference. Like it was try not to, forget about try to get the 6th seed, which they almost did. It was try to not finish 11th at that point. And then they got on a roll and it wound up working out for them. But yeah, this team is not that team. And you don't want to get to the point in February where you're under 500 or 2 over, and you got to run off a bunch of games and at the end of the year, go again, 23-8, go 15 over just to get to 7, right? Because then you're going to have to win a play-in game, and then you're probably getting cooked by Houston or by OKC or Denver at that point anyway. So they have to add talent to the roster. Joke's on you, JD. Steph looked mad last night. In my opinion, it's a roster. I don't get how they didn't look to improve. Houston, Denver all made good trades. The Warriors can be too loyal, a la the Dre punch. Yeah, they again, I think they believed what they had was a little more sturdy over 82 games. I think that's probably the thing that bit them in the rear end on this. But look, there's still time, and it's going to be a matter of Are they going to be willing to part with Jonathan Kuminga now? Will they look to include Brandon Pajemski in a deal? That's going to be a question. Will they add first-round picks, multiple potential first-round picks, depending on the player, to try to go all in on this team? And they can't use the fact that they're mid as an excuse to not do it. The reason they're mid is because they haven't done it. Like that's the part that just doesn't fly with me. I mean, as gnarly as the Kuminga situation was in the offseason, like this is your opportunity to actually move him now. Like you've reset the clock in some ways, right? He's got this year on his deal. He's got next year on his deal. In some ways, you've reset the clock to 2 years ago when he had a year and a half of team control to where you could move him. Don't let it get to next summer. Don't let it get and then not get what you want, and then let it get to the middle of next year and not get what you want, and then you have to trade him for literally nothing. So that that's the part that I think is that's the move. It's always been, can Kuminga either be the guy that fits, or can he be the guy that gets you the guy that fits? That's always been, it's been 3 years of that with Jonathan Kuminga. So how do the Warriors manage that is, again, I'm not saying it's his fault, but he is the pathway toward them getting better. That is just the reality of the situation. All right, let's do a couple of more here. Atco Pest Control. If I was a Warriors GM, I'd trade for Kobe on the first day of the trade deadline. Kobe White, I would imagine. I'd pay him around $30 million per year, could extend. Building block post Steph. He can give you 25, 30. I think Kobe White, in terms of guards, is the best guard they could potentially get. Or it just because I think he is smooth enough. The issue, and this is where the Warriors make it so difficult on themselves, the issue is they need somebody that can play within the system and function. And they need somebody, and then they also need that same player to be able to go off script and get his when either the vets don't have it or the vets are resting. And so that's the part where I think Kobe White most seamlessly fits the ability to do both. Whereas somebody like a Colin Sexton, I don't think Colin Sexton or Malik Monk actually fit in the Warriors scheme unless they're allowing for those players to just do their own thing for 5 or 6 minutes a half. And I think that's been the thing that they've been reluctant to let Kuminga do. Like the Warriors don't like to change the way they play in game to suit one player. They don't. Like for years it's been, well, why don't you just let Kuminga play one-on-one in 6 minutes without Steph on the court and see if they don't. That's not how they operate. It's just not. So good call. I love Kobe White. Whiskey is risky. JD, who can we get with Kuminga and others? Multiple first-round picks. Trey Murphy, PJ Washington, Gafford is somebody, if you're looking for a big that's interesting. I think, keep an eye on Houston, keep an eye on the Pelicans. Herb Jones is another player that I think has the potential to help the Warriors, but you got to be able to find, as we get to the deadline and closer to the deadline, I think more and more names are going to pop up. There are going to be plenty of options. And again, I don't say this to put blame on Kuminga, but the reality is, and we saw it, like, and I know I'll get some pushback because I've had a couple people even after last night. Well, you're going to blame Kuminga now? I'm not blaming Kuminga, but the reality is the Warriors' best version of themselves post Jimmy Butler has been when Kuminga's not really a part of it. And so that's not to say it's his fault, but it's also to say if he's not really a part of it and you move him for even a role player that could be a part of it, you immediately get better because you're adding somebody from nothing in terms of impact or very minimal impact to add. So that's where I've said, too much focus on a star, too much focus on it has to be this certain level of player that you get. No, just actually get, and again, the salaries don't work, but get Kobe White, get PJ Washington, get somebody that can just be a regular bench player contributor for this team. So, yeah, I've been watching way too much of Trey Murphy because of JD. I'm sold. Get him here. Yeah, and he, I don't even think on a night in, night out basis has been as efficient as he would be with the Warriors because the Pelicans are a mess and they've had a bunch of guys out and he's been functioning more as like a top option. I don't think Trey Murphy is like a future best player on your team piece, but I think Trey Murphy is a young enough player to where he can fit with any team in the post-Steph era. Like whatever, like he's not a franchise player though. Like let's make no mistake. Like you're not. So if you're one of these guys that thinks you have to get a franchise player for Kuminga and others, like Trey Murphy, again, I love Trey Murphy, but he's not a franchise player. But dead-eye shooter, can defend, big and long in terms of a wing. And yeah, he would open up, I think, everything for the others. And again, maybe Pajemski's got to go on a deal to do that.
You can probably play him at the 2, 3. I mean, if you really
2, 3, 4.
I don't know how yeah, I was about to say I don't know how big and tall he is, but yeah, I was gonna say
you could play him with Moody and Jimmy. I mean, here's what I know. You can play Steph with Moody, Trey Murphy, and Jimmy and Draymond. Or if you want to start big and you would take Moody out and put Post in at that point, and then Moody's coming off the bench, you could do that too. You could go Steph, Trey Murphy, Jimmy, Draymond, Quentin Post. Like you could do either of those things. So, all right, let's do 2 more, and then we'll get out of here. Is we're a little Just Dubs OT here on Saturday on into the afternoon here. Joke's on you. This team is made of guards who can't create, 3 or 4 who can guard but not shoot, pass, guard, and a 5 who plays below the rim. Yeah, it's just not a well put together roster in terms of the balance of the modern NBA when push comes to shove. And there's ways that it can function, and we've seen it. But yeah, I mean, Atco asking about Keegan Murray or Trey Murphy. I mean, I'd rather have Trey Murphy, I think, because he's owed less now moving forward. But I mean, I would take Keegan Murray, but Keegan Murray's not like Keegan Murray can't get traded. It's Keegan Murray's not somebody the Warriors can get now because he just got extended. So now it's the opposite. Like it's the weird.
Oh yeah, it's
base
like
your
how
compensation
Moses contract, right? Like he was still it was the rookie amount that counted towards
right. He's making 11, but then it goes up to like 25 or 27 or something. So you can send out a certain amount, but you have to take back more. Keegan Murray's essentially untradeable until the offseason is probably the best way to put it. So Trey Murphy. Trivia question for JD. Who is the last Boston College guy on the Dubs? It's a good question. Before Quentin Post? Bill Curley? I don't know. Anybody remember Bill Curley? Kyle sure as heck doesn't, but
no.
Raph probably does. Bill Curley? That
sounds familiar.
That might have been. Raph,
John
remember
Joe
Bill
Curley?
Kai Bowman. Good call. Kai Bowman.
Wow.
All right.
What a name.
Yeah, that's right. That there are a lot of things I've tried to forget about that 2019-2020 season that ended with the pandemic. But yeah, Bill Curley's a good name. All right, let's end it on that note. Yeah, Robert. Good. Yeah, Kai Bowman. Good. I like that. Good answer. All right, that'll do it. Kyle, great stuff, my man. Appreciate you. Raph, always a pleasure, my friend. We'll talk to you again next Saturday, and we'll talk to you again. No Dubs OT. By the way, I mentioned this last night. No Dubs OT Monday because of the 49er game. We'll be on our air as the Warriors will take on the Jazz. But we're back Wednesday from Harmonic in Thrive City, and we're back for the foreseeable after that. Shouldn't have any more preemptions due to Niners for a bit. So join us Wednesday night after the Warriors take on the Houston Rockets, and we will go from there. So for Kyle and for Raph, I'm JD. We'll talk to you then right here on the Sports Leader.
KNBR.